Whenever a new Resident Evil game is released, I always have the same question. Can Resident Evil insert number here be cleared using only the knife? That's the video. Let's meet our characters. Resident Evil 9 has you play as two of them, newcomer Grace Ashcroft and fan favorite Leon S. Kennedy. Each one has their own style of gameplay. Grace is grounded in the survival horror roots of the series, and generally has much slower gameplay focused on exploration and resource management instead of combat. If we do need to fight, just know that Grace's knives eventually break, and they can be lost when used as a defensive item to avoid grabs. So Grace will need to rely on crafting and exploration to get more knives throughout the run. Leon, on the other hand, is much more focused on the combat, and in RE9 he offers a new flavor of knife only, known as Hachet. This new refined melee option is perfect for any edgelord that enjoys spouting one-liners in the face of certain death.
Should've worn a helmet.
Unlike Grace's knives, if the hatchet gets weak or even breaks, it can be sharpened at any point to repair it. The hatchet has quick attacks, heavy attacks that you can use to get yourself killed, melee attacks that set up finishers, and even a parry that works on pretty much anything, which is good because Leon is the part I'm most worried about. Knife only means knife only, except I guess in this case it also means hatchet only, but I won't be using anything else unless I have to. That means no special items or charms, no bottles or injectors for easy kills with Grace, and no enemy weapons with Leon either. In this video we'll find out how much of RE9 can you clear using just the knife. Or hatchet, you know what I mean. How much of it is even possible? Let's start up a new game of RE9 and find out.
What? Who?
The run begins with FBI analyst Grace Ashcroft investigating the Wrenwood Hotel. It's the same place her mother was murdered just 8 years ago, which seems like a bad idea, but we hold W nonetheless. And after a few minutes, we get through the investigation portion of the intro and find ourselves being hunted by the girl. Originally a small clone girl named Marie, now turned giant monster that eats human heads like they're candy. And I know what you're thinking, can I remove my own head to stop her? No, it didn't work. Still, we don't have to be afraid of the girl, and we can usually just run away. And actually sometimes she's pretty cool. Sometimes. After escaping the girl and holding W through Leon's intro, we finally get into the real gameplay. The knife-only run truly begins with Leon and Grace at the Rhodes Hill Chronic Care Center. For most of the knife-only run, we'll be emphasizing the run part of that title. Most enemies and encounters can and should be avoided at all costs, but sometimes we're forced to clear out waves of enemies before unlocking the next area, which is exactly what happens when Leon first reaches the care center. Leon's first forced fight sequence starts by running past the chainsaw zombie here. This chainsaw will one-shot you even on normal difficulty, and I can't use a gun to counter the attack like I normally would. So for now, we skip past him and take out the nurse hidden around the corner instead. In early game, I found that zombies will typically get stunned after 2 heavy attacks and a single slash. Once a zombie is stunned, you just need to make sure that you're positioned in a way that your melee will set up the quick kill follow-up afterwards. As long as there's a wall nearby for the zombie to splash into, you should be good. After clearing out the other zombies as they wake up, I finally shift focus to that chainsaw zombie. I decided to save him for last and baited him into the corner of this room before taking him out. That will make sense in just a second, but for now, we have to hurry over to this door before it opens. If you're ready for this surprise zombie attack, you can actually score another quick kill on one of the zombies in here. Normally, Leon would just pull off an easy zombie collateral shot like this. But in knife only, this room can become messy really fast. So I decided to let the zombies just funnel through the door so that I could kind of control the chaos a bit. This will actually be a common strat used throughout the run. Unfortunately, some of the zombies exited through the other door and made their way to that chainsaw on the other side of the room. But by the time they've got the chainsaw, I've finished clearing out the exam room. I turn around to take out a straggler, and I let the remaining zombies show us their chainsaw trick that they've been practicing in their stepdad's driveway all summer. Let's see it. 10 out of 10, no notes, thanks for the assist. And with that, the first challenge of Leon's knife-only run is clear. At this point, I had a pretty good feeling about the rest of the run, which was a huge mistake on my part, because this run has some demons in it.
Oh, shit.
But now that we've cleaned house with Leon, things slow way down as we switch to Grace. This is probably the longest section of Grace stuff in a casual run, and there are a handful of key items that we need to collect before we can get through it. Grace starts out by sneaking past the grumpy chef zombie to grab our first makeshift knife. The knife has a basic slash combo and a god tier stab attack. You can also do a running thrust that is good for initiating an attack on grounded enemies if you're feeling fancy, but for the most part, we'll just be using the knife in a stun and run fashion. I sneak past Chunk to get the corrosive early. This helps because we get a key item without having to walk past this group of zombies again. But I won't be using the setup for the insta-kill on Chunk since I can't throw bottles in this challenge. But I'm sure Chunk appreciates that, and I'm sure he'll be nice later in the run when I have to return here. After grabbing some pack upgrades and some more key items, we find ourselves in the garage for our first disgusting example of non-knife gameplay. I wish I could say that this is the only time a gun is needed, but we all know that isn't the case. But still, we continue, and after collecting the heart and the lungs, it's time to use them. In a normal run, you would have shot that group of zombies earlier before Chunk, but since we didn't, this doctor zombie is here now, and we're gonna have to deal with him. The stab keeps him contained pretty well to this side of the room, which lets us take him out before the other zombie notices. Once we use the heart and lungs, this zombie wakes up, and we need his ID badge to enter the isolation ward. But because our knife is almost broken from the doctor we just poked, we're gonna have to run away from this guy for now. Did you guys know this actually works? You can just run away and he dies. The huge coward strat wins again. With the ID bracelet secured, we're just one step away from escaping the care center. But to do so, we need to recruit the help of Emily, a blind little girl who was once roommates with Marie. Unlike Marie, this clone girl doesn't try to bite our heads off. Yet. Which is good because Grace needs her braille reading skills to solve the puzzle to get the final key item that is tied to our escape. While carrying Emily, Grace can't use her knife, so stealth will be key. As long as we got Emily to the isolation ward, everything else works itself out. Or so I thought. While Emily is solving the puzzle, Grace is locked into her first and only forced combat room in the game.
And on my insanity run, I actually had an easier time than I did on standard. That's because I was able to make use of the insanity exclusive Rip Knife, which does a ton of damage and cuts down the zombies with no problem. On my standard run though,
I was down to just 2 knives at this point, and it wasn't enough to get past the first 3 zombies. But then I noticed, Grace can turn any of her knives into scrap, and it takes 2 pieces of scrap to make a new knife. That means I could let my knives get weak, then scrap them to make a 3rd knife. There are 3 zombies I have to take out, and each knife can kill roughly 1 zombie. So yeah, I was cutting it a little close on this one, and luckily the 4th enemy that spawns doesn't need to be killed, which is really good because the 4th enemy is a blisterhead, a faster and stronger version of the standard zombie. If I had to kill that thing, I probably would have just been cooked. Instead, we just sneak past it, just in time to see Emily get kidnapped by her former roommate. We don't get much time to process this though, because before we know it, it's back to Leon for the first boss fight. I tried running around the area, baiting Chunk like you normally would, but that would always end the same way, with me getting 1 hit on Chunk at a time while he chased me around in circles forever. It was awful, so I decided to try and copy the speedrun strat and defeat Chunk in that first room. I did this by circling him while mashing the quick attack and using the heavy attack to move myself forward when necessary. It worked for a while, and I managed to get a good amount of damage in, before Chunk eventually broke free and started chasing me around. But by then, I still had the high ground to use, and his health was low enough for me to use those scripted hatchet attacks to finish him off. Nice and easy. Next up for Leon though, we make our way up to Victor's office.
What a fucking shame.
But as soon as we start opening this secret door, Leon is rushed by a mob of blisterheads. The normal combo I was using in the intro of 2 heavy attacks and 1 slash won't cut it with these guys at all. Instead, we have to rely on the parry. After each parry, we can land a few quick attacks to wear down their health. But what you really want to do is get a perfect parry on this attack here. It's the easiest way to get a setup for a finisher, which let me quickly kill the blisterheads and put this whole nightmare room behind me. Thank God. Meanwhile, Grace has followed Marie into the basement to rescue Emily. And honestly, after that Leon chapter, the basement is pretty cozy in comparison. To free Emily, we just need to collect 3 joint plugs and a special tool to unlock Emily's cell, and power the elevator so that we can escape. I was able to craft a new knife with some scrap that I found, and I followed a slower route than usual through this vent that helps me avoid Marie without the use of any bottles. For the most part, we're just cruising through the basement at this point. The only real combat for this segment is during the meat processing part, and even then, you can actually just avoid all the zombies here by running around if you wanted to. kinda like you would do in the final puzzle solution. Anyway, after collecting all 3 gizmos and freeing Emily, we make our desperate escape in the elevator and find ourselves in a helicopter, which is just always a good sign in Resident Evil games.
It's finally over.
All we need to do now is head into the secret lab full of zombies and grab the keys. Easy peasy, right? Well, actually, yeah. I'm obviously not using the spray that kills the zombies here, but that's okay, because if you run fast enough, you only really need to take 1 grab throughout the whole lab section. And even then, you could probably dodge it if you wanted to, but whatever. With the keys secured, we make it back to the helicopter and, yep, you guessed it, immediately crash. While Grace is getting hit with a classic RE trope, Leon is forced into another one. Much like in RE4, Leon has to use a sniper rifle to cover Grace while she's escaping from the wreckage. This makes 2 uses of guns now, and we're just getting started. Luckily, after the sniping session, Leon is able to do the entire chapel fight that follows with his hatchet only. Now you might think this fight would be pretty cool. I'm so sorry to disappoint you. Yeah, I'm not super proud of this cheese, but trying to fight this guy straight on was just not working. But every time he jumps down from here, you can really get some damage in. And eventually, doing this a few times, I was able to take him down. Next, we get another segment with Grace that is pretty much exactly the same as the speedrun. We need to collect another 3 gizmos. I'm starting to notice a pattern with RE9 and collecting 3 keys at once. At any rate, Grace just needs to turn these 3 switches in order to restore power and open the sunroof, so she can use the light to melt Marie and defeat her once and for all. By the way, you aren't forced to shoot her here, so the knife only status is preserved a bit for this section, at least until Leon shows up to shoot the mutated Emily monster at the end. Even if you move your aim away from her, the game will still force a shot. And even though it missed her vitals, I think you could still argue that this would count against pure knife only status. Anyway, now that Grace is out of the care center, that's pretty much it for her in this run. A lot of her knife only strats are found in the care center, so afterwards things pretty much play out like normal. We'll see her later in the ARC lab, but again, we'll just be collecting our keys and moving forward. However, that isn't the case with Leon, and we're just now entering the biggest part of his playthrough, where most of the forced mob fights and bosses are waiting. I am of course talking about and right off the bat, it's a spider. And I think this was my least favorite of the boss fights for knife only. Normally you can just run around grabbing ammo and health while shooting the spider in the butt from a distance. There's even an explosive tank that you can use to stun the spider to get massive damage. You can still get a stun on the spider by using the hatchet and circling around and taking your swipes. The only problem though is this move. This grab attack tracks you and has insane range, making it basically impossible to avoid unless of course you run around a corner like this, where the spider requires a special animation to pass. After doing a few loops of this, I started feeling pretty good about the fight. It felt possible. But then, like other great Resident Evil bosses that shan't be named, the spider summons some minions. Thankfully, these things aren't really a big deal, but the spider's new butt splooge attack did hit me once, and that was pretty annoying. But after a long, and I mean long, fight, the spider eventually died, and I was able to move on to the longest stretch of gizmo collecting yet. But first, we need to check out the BSAA camp. Here we can gain access to the shop for the first time, where we can buy things like health and upgrade our hatchet. To clear the next area, Leon will need to collect 3 pieces of a detonator in order to destroy this gate before leaving. We'll even have to stop for gas along the way. So after resting at base camp, we move into this warehouse and begin the search for the first piece. And right away, we're forced to use guns again. This time we need to shoot down these platforms so that we can actually get through the area and collect the first piece of our detonator. Next, we use the apartment keys that we grabbed to reach this new area. We have to grab 2 batteries to get through, and the first one is here. In this room, we need to slowly turn the wheel to move this wall and form a bridge on the other side of the room. Enemies will be spawning as soon as we start messing with this wheel, and we have another big guy waiting for us on the other side of the wall as well. I ended up taking down the zombies on my side before turning the wheel and just running for the exit. It was a little sloppy because the speed strat of looking away didn't work out for me, but we made it through regardless and grabbed battery 1 of 2. The next one was actually a little easier. I just used stealth for a few zombies and ran by the rest to quickly collect the second battery and gain access to the gas station. In order to get the other detonator pieces, we have to gather fuel to power some generators. And to do that, we'll need to use a gun to get this ladder down. And of course, as soon as we reach the gas station, there is a huge wave of zombies that Leon has to fight. After taking out the chainsaw zombie and totally letting this guy with the gas tank blow me. Oh, hold on, I gotta turn the page. Up on purpose, I went on to take out every zombie until the boss showed up. This chainsaw mini-boss zombie was kind of a pain because he never gets stunned, and when I was mashing attacks out, he would just do this. So anytime I heard this sound, I knew to move out of the way, get to his back before I continued to attack. And with this strategy, he went down pretty easily actually. Now that we have the fuel, it's time to collect the other two pieces of the detonator and blow this joint. I won't lie, I just ran through this part holding W and fucking hope for the best. It worked out for the most part. With the second piece collected, I took a zip line down to another building where I was forced to use guns again a few more times. Sometimes it was to shoot boards like this to create a new path, and another time it was to shoot the glass floor to create a new path. You hate to see it, but still, we hold W for this part as well and collect our third gizmo. With all three detonator pieces collected, all that was left to do was assemble them at the gate and blow it up. And there isn't much to say about the next part other than it's another time we're forced to use the guns. Even if you try tanking all the hits here, you still need to take out these dogs or you just die. Not to mention the explosives later. And I tried just sitting here and letting Leon crash through them, but no luck. He won't move until you shoot that first barrel. After the second coolest motorcycle stunt in the series, it's time to revisit the RPD. As cool as it is to see Tofu and Rebecca again, there isn't much to this segment unfortunately, and after a few seconds of holding W, we're already past it. At least the hatchet worked on this ladder though. And now we reach the orphanage. The orphanage is by far the worst part of the game to replay. We just sit around, hiding and holding W. There's no combat either, so nothing changes for a knife only run anyway. Instead, we're just going to move on to the conclusion of Leon's Raccoon City vacation. We're almost at the end of the game, and from this point forward, things get pretty tough. Leon will be facing deadlier enemies and in-game bosses, starting with Mr. X. After he chases us through the RPD for a bit, we take things outside. In the normal fight, you would be putting your shotgun to work here, hitting his chest and moving around the cars for protection. But with the hatchet, we need to land some parries if we want to avoid damage. And if I get too greedy with the attack spam, I won't be able to parry the attacks at all. So I tried to limit the amount of attacks I would do before circling to the tyrant's back and just repeating the combo, always looking for the parry. Pretty similar to the strat with a spider, to be honest. It works out until the tyrant decides to smash Leon with a car, which you can parry, kinda. Still, this boss fight wasn't so bad, actually, and as far as the hatchet only run goes, I might have enjoyed this one the most. Unlike the next boss, which, knife only or not, I generally just didn't care for that much. Unfortunately, while you can parry the small plants and kill them instantly, the same cannot be said of the actual boss, Plant 43. For this fight, you need to use a gun. Even if you could hit the plant with a hatchet, you still need a gun to blow it up at the end, so that sucks. With the plant destroyed, we can enter the final area of the game. Here, Leon needs to reach Grace before his nap time, but there are some new enemies standing in his way. Earlier, we dealt with zombies that had some guns and explosives, and it was kind of annoying, but now Leon is fighting living soldiers and they have much better aim. Luckily, Leon's a master of stealth, and I excel in being reckless with stupid luck. Together, we're unstoppable. Once the guards are dealt with, we can move on to the next group of soldiers. This time, they're posted up and actually waiting for us. Yeah, I don't know why I thought this would work, but if we crouch walk as far as the cover allows us and then run, we can make it every time. And luckily, the crouch walk keeps us from being detected while we cross over to them. This way, we can drop down and pick them off while we still have the element of surprise.
Should've worn a helmet.
The backup arrives, and they are quite tanky. So I decided to even the odds a bit, and I recruited some backup of my own. With the guards distracted, this section was actually pretty easy. But now it's time to face their boss. Hunk is a pretty fun fight on knife only. This is actually how I did the fight on my first Insanity playthrough, just for fun. There's also the insta-kill strat here, but in the spirit of this challenge, I decided to fight him for real. You really just need to parry his attacks anyway and then chop him when you have an opening, so it's not quite as fun as the Tyrant for me, but it's still a really cool fight overall. With Hunk definitely dead, Leon meets up with Grace and rescues her from Whisker. Then he decides to take a quick nap to recharge. He's just like me for real. Meanwhile, Grace explores the Ark herself now, running past Lickers and collecting 2 keys to reach the end of the game. Like I mentioned earlier, since I'm not using bottles or any other weapons, there really isn't anything special about this segment. One cool detail I noticed on this playthrough though is that you can actually see Leon wake up from his nap, and he even takes the ladder up to the room where his next segment begins. Kinda cool. In fact, let's just skip to that segment now. There's not much going on here. After climbing the ladder myself, for some reason, Leon starts feeling sick as some enemies approach. Even if he is dying, these guys should really know better by now than to fight Leon near a wall like that.
Should've worn a helmet.
For this segment, Leon will be slipping in and out of this dying state. When this happens, we're basically just super slow, which is great because, we're going to be running past tons of super fast enemies with the Lickers. And you already know that Leon is about to fight waves of them after this part, so let's just get into it. This fight kinda sucked. I mean, there are just so many Lickers, and oftentimes they're all attacking at the same time. As usual, the parry saves us though. But to speed up this fight and increase your chances of winning, you have to bait out the jump attacks. I tried to do this by standing a certain distance away from them. If you manage to parry either of the jumping attacks, the Lickers end up on their backs like they do in RE5, and from here you can get a quick kill with the melee finisher. My plan here was to get as many of those finishers as I could, while getting a couple slashes in whenever I had the time or failed a perfect parry. I was cutting things close, but in the end I was barely able to edge out a win. But my health was basically non-existent at this point, and after defeating the Lickers, there's still one final wave of zombies before this section can end. And of course our friends at Capcom decided to give Leon a tummy ache during this part to make things even more difficult. Honestly though, compared to the Lickers, these guys were pretty free, but I'm not gonna lie, because I was at like 1 HP, the fight was pretty tense the whole time. I really didn't want to start the Licker fight over. Luckily though, Leon made it through, and he took a much earned nap afterwards. Now it's just time for Grace to enter the password for Elpis and end the run right there. Nah, I'm just kidding. Even though I obviously can't use the hatchet to fight the final nemesis form of Victor, I still can fight his first form. And I'm glad I did, because that fight was actually pretty fun. It was a bit like the fight with Mr. X, only longer, and this time I felt like I had to take turns more often. Parry, get a hit. Parry, get another hit. Parry, take a third hit, and so on. The entire time I was just waiting to parry this kick attack so that I could get a bigger burst of damage in. Eventually, Victor will jump away and charge up this electric attack. I used this time to collect health and sharpen the hatchet before repeating the turn-taking strat after the electric attack played out. The fight was fun, but with hatchet only, it lasted just way too long and things started to get a bit dull. So I went ahead and fully upgraded the hatchet just to help speed things up a bit. And after 3 loops of this, he finally died. And then the big dumb monster nemesis comes out and, of course, we're required to use guns there. But that's it. RE9 knife and hatchet only is done. Sure, there were a lot of sections that required the use of guns, like the final boss for example, but for the most part, it was an enjoyable knife only run overall. Still though, if you've seen my previous knife only video, you know exactly where this game belongs. Anyway, thanks for watching. Leave a like to help the video, and be sure to check out my other knife only video, or maybe this other Resident Evil video being randomly suggested to you right now is better. I don't know, but hey, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.